On the night of April 19th, 1995, a heavy man in Pittsburgh covered his face in lemon juice. Not as a joke, not as a dare. He did it because he believed, completely, calmly, without a flicker of doubt, that it would make him invisible. Then he walked into a bank in broad daylight, looked directly into the security camera, and robbed it. He robbed the second bank the same way. No mask, no disguise, just a face glistening with citrus and a mind utterly convinced it had found a flaw in reality. When the police arrived at his door hours later, he was genuinely confused. He looked at the officers and said, "But I wore the juice." Most people hear this story and laugh. A fool, an outlier, a man so stupid he became a punchline. But that's not what this is. Because the truly disturbing part of this story isn't that one man believed something insane. It's the reason he believed it. And it's the same reason sitting quietly inside your head right now. 4 years later, that lemon juice robber landed on the desk of a psychologist at Cornell University named David Dunning. Most researchers would have read it and moved on. A curiosity, a weird crime. Dunning read it and felt something colder. He noticed the man's defining trait wasn't stupidity, it was confidence. A serene, unshakable certainty that he was right. And it raised a question so simple it had somehow gone unasked for the entirety history of psychology. What if the skills you got to be good at something are the exact same skills you need to know whether you're good at it? Sit with that for a second. Because if it's true, then the worst performers in any field would be trapped in a kind of mirror that only reflects back what they want to see. They wouldn't just fail, they would be incapable of noticing that they failed. So, in 1999, Dunning and his student Justin Kruger decided to test it. They gave students tests, logic, grammar, even humor. Then they asked each student a second question, the one that actually mattered. How well do you think you did? The answers broke something in our understanding of the human mind. The students who scored at the very bottom, the worst of the worst, didn't rate themselves low. They rated themselves above average. The people in the bottom 12% of skill estimated they were performing better than 2/3 of the room. They weren't lying. That's the part that unsettles researchers to this day. They weren't being arrogant or defensive or proud. They genuinely could not see the gap. And here's the mechanism, the thing that turns a funny chart into something closer to horror. To know that your grammar is wrong, you need to understand grammar. To recognize a flaw in your logic, you need the very logic you're missing. The skill that would let you spot your mistake is the same skill you don't have. So incompetence comes with a hidden second penalty. The first penalty is that you fail. The second penalty is that same blindness that made you fail now hides the failure from you. You become both the prisoner and the guard. The lemon juice robber didn't have a knowledge problem. He had a mirror problem. And he was looking into it with total trust. Now you might be thinking the answer is obvious. Just learn more. Knowledge fixes confidence. But it doesn't. And the way it falls is one of the strangest curves in all of psychology. When Dunning-Kruger plotted confidence against actual skill, they didn't get a straight line climbing upwards. They got a mountain with a cliff. At the very beginning of learning anything, a language, an instrument, investing, parenting, your knowledge rockets upwards almost immediately. After a single afternoon, you feel like you can understand the whole thing. Researchers gave this a peak. They call it Mount Stupid. It's the moment you've learned just enough to be dangerous, enough to have opinions, enough to argue, but not enough to know what you don't know. And then something brutal happens. The more you actually learn, the more you discover the size of the territory you haven't touched. Every answer opens up 3 new questions. The ground you were standing on so proudly turns out to be the edge of something vast and dark. So your confidence doesn't keep rising, it collapses. This is the valley of despair. The point where genuine learning makes you feel like you know less than when you started. Because for the first time, you can actually see how much there is. The cruelty is precise. The beginner feels like a master, the intermediate feels like a fraud, and only after years of slowly, painfully, does confidence climb back up. But this time, it never reaches the old summit, because the expert has learned the one thing the beginner never could. The expert has learned the shape of their own ignorance. Here's where it stops being about a robber or a graph or strangers in a 1999 study. You have been listening to all this with a quiet, comfortable feeling. A feeling that says, yes, this explains so many people I know. That feeling is the trap closing. Because the Dunning-Kruger Effect is not a description of stupid people. It's a description of the human mind itself, yours included. Every single person believes they are the rare exception who sees themselves clearly. This belief is a symptom, not the cure. There is no internal alarm that rings when you are wrong. That's the whole point. Being wrong feels exactly like being right. Same calm, the same certainty. From the inside, there's no difference at all. Right now in your life, there are things you are confidently, completely wrong about. Opinions you defended, skills you overrate, beliefs you've never questioned because they're simply always felt true. You cannot feel which ones they are. If you could, you'd already have fixed them. The lemon juice is still on the face. We've just learned to stop calling it that. So what do you do with a flaw you can't see, hidden by the very mind you'd use to look for it? The people who study this for a living all arrive at the same quiet answer. And it's not be smarter. Intelligence doesn't protect you. Sometimes it just builds better excuses. The answer is smaller and harder. You assume the gap is there. Always. You treat your own certainty as the least trustworthy feeling you have. You go looking for parts of yourself you're sure are fine, because sure is exactly where the blindness lives. The confident man walked into the bank because he never once asked if he might be wrong. The wisest people you will ever meet are quietly haunted by that question every day of their lives. The fool and the genius feel the exact same thing from the inside. The only difference is that one of them suspects it. The question was never whether you have a blind spot. The question is whether you have the courage to keep looking for it, knowing you may never see what's already there.